Hello. It's your show host, Regina Huber. And again, I'm with all you beautiful souls. It is such a delight and such an honor to be here with you. So again, this is Regina Huber from Transform Your Performance with the same website, transformyourperformance.com. And today I am tuning in live for the last time in a while from Miami Beach, Florida, United States. Today, you will understand more of what makes me an adventurous, eclectic nomad as I'm breaking down my tents again and I'm saddling my camels and I'm moving on. Okay, so that is what I'm going to talk about today for the most part. And I'm also continuing through those travels, continuing my eclectic life and experience on 5 continents for now, experience that has shaped me into a multicultural and multilingual transformational leadership coach and international inspirational speaker, as well as an author, the author of the book Speak Up, Stand Out and Shine, and co-author of several other books. And as you know by now, the show is to inspire you to ignite a spark wherever your path leads you, to fuel that flame and turn it into a strongly burning fire so you can shine your brightest light and increase your influence and impact as bold, value-driven leaders. And today I want to do this a little bit through some of my own stories and really inspire you to potentially, look at new possibilities, take some risks sometimes, go on a new type of movement. I love to move around in the world, so whatever that movement is for you, whatever you need right now in terms of moving forward, moving in a different direction or moving in a different way, right? So as you know, I'm all about leadership, freedom, and adventure. So I'm starting a brand new adventure, and this is an adventure now a little bit for myself, but we'll see what comes up in terms of leadership opportunities, speaking and inspirational opportunities, and I'm always open to them, as you know. So I'm hopping continents again. After seeing my family for a few days over in Europe, I'll hop on over to East Africa, and I'll start my new 2022 adventure in Tanzania or Tanzania, depending on what pronunciation you prefer. I've heard so many different ones. I think my preferred one for now is Tanzania, and until I learn more about it and the different reasons for pronouncing. I'm not sure yet where else my path may lead me on that trip. So maybe I'll stay in Tanzania for the entire time I'm planning to travel for now, but I'll make that decision when the time comes. I'll take that freedom and that liberty to make that decision later, and I love to have some flexibility. I may also extend my trip beyond the 3 months I'm currently considering. I can't really say yet what's going to come exactly. I have a vision about this. I have certain images in my head, but of course it could all change. And especially with what's going on in the world right now, we don't know exactly what the situation is going to be in 3, 4, 5 months. So the one thing though, that's for sure, and that's a fact, is that I cannot wait to set foot on the beautiful African continent again. And in the meantime, my intention is to learn at least 1 or 2 words of Swahili every day. Yes, 1 or 2 words. And by the way, so definitely already know 2 words and a few more, right? Like karibu, welcome, asante or asante sana, thank you very much. The typical expressions we usually learn at the beginning, but there's of course so much more, and it's a very, very different language. So it's quite challenging to remember the new words. And we're also not, as kids, we just soaked it all up, right? So if you learn a different language, a new language as a little girl or boy, it's pretty easy to just learn it as you go along. You don't have to make such a big effort. But as adults, it's, I don't know. I mean, we just have to find our own way, right? And yeah, but I'm determined to at least learn a little bit of Swahili. It also sounds really nice. And by the way, Swahili, that also reminds me of a late member of my extended family. And he was a young guy who was the most adventurous I have heard of in my family. Oh my God. You know, he climbed mountains in Africa and South America by himself that others had not climbed by themselves, sorry. And you know, maybe in a team, but not by themselves. And nobody really knows about this because he was never famous. So no one knows except his family, his friends, and especially also an older close friend of his who was a big adventurer himself. And the people, of course, you know, people in the audience that he showed his slides in between travels to, because he did slide presentations. And he did those in his hometown so that he could finance his travels. And this hometown was Trostberg, and it's in the south or southeast of Germany, Bavaria. But also, you know, he did it because he wanted to share, but also to finance his trips. So I want to tell you a little bit of that story because it's just so exciting. And, you know, what's really interesting is that I only found out about him a few years ago. I didn't even know he existed, you know, and that was through a documentary, because they made a documentary on him, but it's only shown in small theaters and during film festivals. For specific reasons, which are not important for our purposes here. But I happened to be back in Germany while this documentary is playing, and when it shortly after it came out, and it was playing at a local film fest, and the name of it was, the title of this documentary was Tod auf dem Nil, Death on the Nile. So that's how I found out about him and about his adventurous life. But let me tell you what this film was mostly about. So it turns out that one day he decided to set out to Lake Victoria in East Africa. So Lake Victoria, you may know, is bordered by Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. And he decided to go to Lake Victoria. He was, of course, well prepared, but he would go on a journey all the way from what's considered the source of the Nile, Lake Victoria, all the way up to Egypt. And the Nile River, for those of you who don't know this, it flows over 4,100 miles or 6,600 kilometers, and through 10 countries before it arrives in Egypt. So this guy had put it in his mind that he'd make this trip all by himself in his boat. So even his older, very adventurous friend said in the documentary that doing this on his own was almost impossible. It was very daring and intrepid. And in fact, he almost became the meal of hungry crocodiles along the way at some point, but he managed to paddle his way out of their claws. Well, not exactly their claws, but it was tight. Okay. How do we know? Well, he sent some postcards along the way with, you know, like smoke signals from his trip, basically. And he also sent photos and letters with longer reports to his older friend. Now the photos, this was in the 70s. So I think it was 70s. Yeah, it must have been 70s. So he had one of those Polaroid instant cameras. And the photo for the documentary was also from that camera. Now, anyway, so he was making his way up the Nile, and he did speak Swahili. But of course, not everybody along the Nile speaks Swahili either, right? Africa is very rich in so many cultures and languages. But he managed to make friends and get food and put up his tent whenever he needed to along the way. So he made friends with people, and he did his best to maybe use sign language. I don't know how exactly he did it to get along with these people. And at one time, he was even also put in prison. And he did know that he needed a permit to travel through a certain area, which he had actually. He was well prepared. But then they threw him in a prison anyway. And most of his stuff was stolen at one point. But somehow he managed to travel on with his boat. And it was shortly, actually, before getting to his destination in Egypt, his final destination. Shortly before that he sent his last smoke signal, his last sign that he was alive, the last postcard. And then there was radio silence. No one ever heard from him again. It's very likely that he was killed in Egypt. Why? No one really knows. There was an investigation that started, years ago with his dental imprints, but it was stopped. Dental imprints, I'm saying this because, they were looking, of course, to compare dead bodies to see who it was and have proof that it was him. But this investigation was stopped for some reason, and I think it was recently resumed in the past few years, but I haven't heard back about any success yet. Anyway, I wanted to share this story with you because I think I might have gotten some of these adventurous genes through my dad's family, through this guy, in a way, but I'm definitely far from the idea of traveling up the Nile on a small boat all by myself. So no worries about that. Okay, definitely not something I would do. But what I do want to do, though, is explore more of Africa, the culture. I love music, as you may have heard me say in the past. So far, of the countries I've visited on the African continents, I've been to Morocco, Ghana, South Africa repeatedly, Cameroon, Rwanda, and Uganda. And before the tyrannical closure of our borders and those travel restrictions in 2020, in March 2020, I had just come back actually from 2 months in Uganda and Rwanda. And I was scheduled to travel back to Rwanda at the end of March to speak at the Kigali Convention Center. And from there, I was supposed to travel to Kenya to an event, and to South Africa. I was co-organizing an event there with somebody, with one of the queens in South Africa. And then I was going to go to Nigeria. I just signed a contract for a big event in Nigeria where I was going to speak and teach. And I was also in negotiations with the Nigerian bank, and I was going to do events and workshops, and I was also looking forward to traveling to other places in the world that I had made engagements for, made arrangements for, and had engagements for. And those included England, Hawaii, Kansas City, etc., all places where I would travel to as a speaker. And also for other reasons. But as you might have guessed, all these engagements were canceled from one day to the next, almost. So I haven't been back to Africa in a while now, although I did travel to Mexico and Germany a few times since then. Now, well, to Germany once and to Mexico a couple of times. So for now, what I've been doing is I've been watching some videos about Tanzania, and I've already made a new contact virtually of someone I'm hoping to meet in Dar es Salaam at some point along the way. And the beautiful island of Zanzibar is on my list, and I've been watching people climb Kilimanjaro on video. So I now have a better idea of what to expect, though it's always different when you get there, of course, and of course, the real experience is always the best. Also, Dar es Salaam means place of peace. So I think that's really beautiful. So I have high hopes for that place. Anyway, that's what's on my plan for now. And yes, I'll be working. So it's not a vacation. I often travel while working, and all I need is really good internet and a place to work, of course. So yeah, something that can serve me as a desk, basically. Yes. So I'm also planning to continue writing my book while I'm there, and into that book, in that book, I'll share a lot of stories and some of those I want to share today, because this is actually going to be the last show for me in a while. So I want to make it really fun and share some of my personal adventure stories with you for the time we have left today. I will pause my show. I think I should be back in the fall, but I just really need a little bit more time right now for some other priorities in my life and for this trip. So about the book, that's where I'm also going to share those adventure stories, and I'm going to also share them as they all of them have turned into lessons along the way in my life, and into hopefully also greater wisdom. And I want to share some of those in the book and the lessons that are attached to them. Okay, I have a lot of those for sure. So that's definitely not a problem. I can easily fill a book with them. But I don't want to only share my painful stories that maybe have given me the greatest growth and learning. I also want to share the ones that are more fun, the wonderful experiences I have had. And so, in the book, it's going to be a solid mix of amazing growth opportunities turned into lessons that are meant to inspire you as well, because I didn't have those experiences only for myself. I feel I had them so I could share them with you. I had them so that I could inspire through them as well. And just like my relative shared his experience, or rather his family shared his Nile adventure through this documentary, which was extremely inspiring to me and very eye-opening in terms of where I got my adventurous spirit from. Although I have to say my dad also was always very adventurous, and he would have loved to travel more, but he couldn't always travel as much as he wanted because he had a farm and we grew up on a farm, right? But anyway, so let me tell you about some other places that are on my list, and let me also tell you why I have this urge to travel. So as I've told you many times, I'm all about movement. I love to move around on this earth. I explore and grow through my experiences. I love to learn how other people live, how they eat, how they dance, how they dress. Traveling the way I travel helps me understand self and others better, actually, because I'm not that person who goes from the airport to my all-inclusive hotel and then sips cocktails all day without ever leaving the compound. That's just not me. That's not me at all. I usually stay at Airbnbs these days. In the past, I backpacked a lot as well, and I'd stay at bed and breakfast or hostels or in cabins on the beach or whatnot, right? In Uganda, Kampala, just recently, about 2.5 years ago, I was invited to stay at a family's home. That was a different experience because they drove me around everywhere, but usually I find my own way around. So I move either by taxi or Uber, by train, or on one of those moto taxis in Rwanda, which are called boda boda in Uganda, the collective taxis in Cameroon as well, the vans, which are called taxis actually in Johannesburg or in South Africa, and which are similar to the ones I used to take very often in Rio de Janeiro when I lived there. And of course, in Rio de Janeiro, it was a bit easier over time because I know my way around a little better, right? So I've done all of that. I've never had a bad experience with any of these means of transportation ever, except that once two motorbike riders started arguing and fighting over having me as a passenger in Kigali. So I just stepped away, but there's nothing serious from that. is their problem, frankly. So, you know, it's just such an amazing experience to travel, how the locals travel, and to really learn. This is a way of learning how they live, right? And if I go to an all-exclusive, I can just, you know, I just could just as well go down the street here in Miami, right? No need to travel for that. Anyway, so I think I'm pretty adventurous in all these senses. Where I'm a bit more selective usually is with food, especially when it comes to body parts of dead animals. So yeah, you know, or over sugared foods, I don't really like them. I've never liked those. But yeah, so I'm more selective with food than with some other things, right? But see, I've had so many great experiences. I've danced on Cameroonian TV without having any preparation and only finding out about this interview that I was going to have that same morning. So you know, I taxied my way through dense traffic really quickly. It is just really, really interesting because I didn't know before that morning that I was even going to be on TV, you know. So it was really interesting because I had a radio interview already with a friend of mine who I had a relationship, a virtual relationship before that already. She's a reporter for CRTV, and so I had done a radio interview with her. Her name is Amy Banda, and then she arranged for this TV interview. So, you know, I was in Cameroon because I had co-hosted a conference with two other ladies. One was a Cameroonian lady who also splits her time between Cameroon and Italy, and the other lady was from Georgia. So we had been staying at the, you know, at I think it was a 5-star, I can't remember, a hotel, the Mount Phoebe Hotel in Cameroon for the conference, because we hosted the conference at that place. But after that was done, I moved to a different place, and yeah, so it was in a different area of Yaoundé, of the city of Yaoundé. And it was a very different hotel, and there was only one phone, and of course, you know, my phone wasn't working well in Cameroon, and my cell phone, and so there was one phone at reception, right? So one of the last mornings in Yaoundé, the owner of the Bellevue Hotel, which was the name of the hotel, came knocking on my door, all excited, and he was shouting, "Hello, madam! I have CRTV station on the phone for you," and I ran up, you know, to the front desk to take the call, and the guy on the phone told me I was supposed to be at the studio by 11 a.m. at the latest to go on the Midi show with Myra Nange at 12. Now, Myra was also who had emceed the conference, but I didn't know that she was going to be on that show actually yet until I got there. So the Midi show was a bilingual show where both English and French were spoken, to make sure both English and French speaking audiences were attended to. The person who called me had no more details about the show, so he was really just the messenger. So I just, you know, found the last clean TV appropriate dress in my suitcase, because it was one of the last few days of my trip, really. Yeah, and I just, you know, put myself on the way and grabbed a taxi to go there, right? So yeah, I also had to, I just literally had a few hours of time, and I had to cancel meetings without my cell phone working, you know, that meetings for that scheduled for that morning, and so on and so forth. So it was a bit stressful, but I was so glad I went through this process so I could actually make it there, because it's so fun. Yeah, so fun. So I got there. I went to the makeup artist's room and got all made up and everything. But, you know, on the way, there's also an interesting story. There was, I mean, in that taxi, we literally, there were several cars that were bumping into us, a motorbike bumping into us, and it was just part of the regular traffic there. There's a huge traffic jam, so it was a bit nerve-wracking, but eventually I did make it through and arrived at the studio. So, you know, I'm usually not a fan of heavy air conditioning, anything like that, but the studio was hot. It was really hot, right? And there was a carpet, which didn't make it any cooler, of course. And so, yeah, eventually, you know, I was also asked to dance on in the studio, so it got hot. It got hot. But anyway, so I had a lovely chat with Myra, and it was flowing really quite nicely despite zero preparation of the content. I had no idea what she was going to ask me. There was also a cook and a chef in the background cooking. So it was really, really an amazing experience, right? And then they had this traditional Cameroonian band opposite the couch where we were sitting on, and they said they had actually called them because of me, because they knew that I loved music, I loved dancing, but I'd never done this type of dancing before. And there was a carpet, and I had these skinny heels on a fluffy carpet. Right? So, but there was, of course, no escaping them now. And although I'd never done any of these dance movements before, it was just incredible fun. The band leader came up, and he came over to teach me some moves, and Myra is an awesome dancer anyway, so I did what I could, and you know, the audience actually loved it. The audience loved it. They said, oh, and then there was this white woman and she did this dance, right? It was so cool. You know, sometimes we just have to go for it. You know, we really have to go for it, right? And yeah, so their audience apparently thought it was awesome. They wrote to me afterward, and I so enjoyed this experience, especially as it was 100% improvised, at least on my end, right? 100% improvised, and yeah, it was amazing. There's so many more stories that I could tell today. I mean, I don't know where to start and where to end. And our showtime is already almost up again. Wow, wow, wow. It always seems like half hour is so long at the beginning, has so much to, you know, so much time to share with you. And then it goes by so fast. All these stories about how I walked from Maboneng, Johannesburg, to the drill hall. That's an area where none of my friends would likely go to ever. It's an amazing experience. I've done night bike rides in Johannesburg. I was taking the Rwanda motor taxis, of course, while I was there, which in itself can be an adventure. Especially also because they usually do not speak English or French. So yeah, so, and you got to negotiate the fare, right? But I've had only good experiences, as I said earlier. Yeah, so it only, you know, if I start a new story now, it's going to be cut off. So I'm pretty much going to leave it here. You got to travel. You got to travel to experience adventures sometimes, and to, you know, it doesn't always have to be expensive or high ticket. It doesn't have to be. Not at all. Not at all. Oftentimes it's much better when you actually don't spend that much money on expensive hotels, right? So yeah, so as I said before, I'm actually not going to be here next Wednesday. But if you missed any of my other 29 shows before this one, which was a little bit more just improvised because I just wanted to share stories with you, then you can still catch those recordings on my Win Win Women TV page, or also on my YouTube channel, Regina Huber. And also check out my website, transformyourperformance.com. And of course, my book, Speak Up, Stand Out, and Shine, so you can keep shining. And I hope to see you again in the fall on this show For now, I'm saying be well until I'm back. Take care and see you again soon. Nos vemos más adelante en el año. Cuídate. Hasta otro día. Se cuide, atémais, prends soin. Pardon, mon français un peu oublié. Prends soin et à bientôt. Pass gut auf dich auf und bis bald. And yes, take care. In the meantime, as always, keep shining in your brightest light, sparkle away like the precious pearl you are, because the world is your oyster.